Yeah, for more on this, we cross to our reporter now, Govind Whittles. Govind, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I think let's start with the DA and the approach that they're taking here, why they are opposing the application for a postponement.
Good morning, and I'm coming to you from the Constitutional Court, which will soon be the site of a very important test for the Independent Electoral Commission, particularly now that the Democratic Alliance has filed its papers opposing the application to postpone the elections to February next year, and has set out its substantive arguments. And we expect the Constitutional Court to issue a date for that urgent hearing pretty soon, hopefully this week. But let's get into the DA's arguments. And you mentioned that they say that the scientific evidence holds that elections are possible this year. But more than that, the most serious of their contentions in their legal papers is the fact that the Constitutional Court is being asked to postpone the elections when the Democratic Alliance believes that would be giving the Constitutional Court the power to change the Constitution itself. The DA has criticized the IEC's court papers, saying that in its court papers it submits arguments which are taking the Constitution in a contradictory fashion, whereas the Constitution is one harmonious whole which should be read complementary, and the DA also believing that if the Constitutional Court is given the right to postpone the elections, this would amount to the Constitutional Court judges having amended the Constitution. The DA strictly believing that the only way to postpone the elections is by going to Parliament and asking for that amendment, and that seeming to be the most contentious issue in those papers.
Yeah, what then has been the IEC's response?
The IEC putting forward a very interesting argument in its replying affidavit, saying that the suggestion that the IEC as a Chapter 9 institution should recommend to Parliament that the Constitution should be amended has invited heavy criticism on other Chapter 9 institutions in the past who have made similar recommendations, such as the Public Protector, and the IEC believing that it is in no position to ask Parliament to amend the Constitution. Then it goes a step further, saying that any postponement or amending of the Constitution by Parliament which would shift the date is undemocratic because it extends the government's term of office, and that should not be done because of the perceptions around it. And essentially the IEC saying that it's wary of going to Parliament and asking them to amend the Constitution because of the implications that would have for extending the municipal council's terms in office, and also extending the overall term of local government in the country through this amendment, and that's why it's heading to the Constitutional Court.
Yeah, and there are quite a few role players here outside of just the DA and the IEC, the ANC as well, and some of the smaller opposition parties. So what are we expecting from the proceedings as they continue?
So what we're expecting is two essential arguments that have emerged. The one is the right to life, and that having to be protected at all costs, and the evidence from the Municipal report which shows that holding elections in October would present a significant risk of the election serving as super spreader events and thereby causing a spike in coronavirus infections and ultimately leading to more loss of life. Whereas the political parties disagreeing with the scientific evidence which was used by the Municipal report, but going a step further in highlighting the concern they have around the Constitutional Court postponing the elections and what precedent that may set in the future in terms of what power that could give the Constitutional Court. But of course they also believe that the Constitutional Court would not accept the IEC's papers and arguments because of the clear provisions in the Constitution. Inevitably, these arguments at the Constitutional Court will center on whether or not the right to life should be protected at all costs, even if it means giving the judges the power to postpone the elections.
Yeah, it certainly is going to be interesting just really how this plays out. In the meantime, though, what we heard from the African National Congress last week and in previous weeks is that they'd like to see a postponement, but they'd like to see a postponement that goes beyond February 2022.
The ANC also saying that it needs more time to get its election machinery in order, and regardless of that, it has begun equipping its branches across the country with enough resources to start the election campaign, but the ANC saying that it would join the IEC's call for the elections to be postponed, although it hasn't given a date beyond February 2022. And this suggestion has not been responded to by all sectors of society in terms of the impact that would have on postponing the elections and extending the municipal term of office beyond February. And that, of course, the IEC has said that is allowed, but is something that they are concerned about.
And at this point, we know that the local elections are set to take place, and that's, of course, the declaration, as we heard it from COGTA Minister as well, for the 27th of October. That really isn't that far away. So one would hope that the process within the Constitutional Court would not be one that drags too long, so that there is some sort of resolution, and if those elections are not postponed, that political parties have time to move.
Yeah, the date has been promulgated by the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs as the 27th of October, and promulgating the date means that the voters' roll itself has been closed, so no more people could be added onto the voters' roll. One of the things that the Democratic Alliance is seeking here at the Constitutional Court is that the voters' roll, or the decision to promulgate the elections by the Cooperative Governance Minister, should be declared invalid and rescinded, and then a registration weekend should be held on the 26th and 27th of August, and thereafter the date should be promulgated anew, and that would mean that additional people would be brought onto the voters' roll. So that's the relief being sought by the Democratic Alliance in terms of the voters' roll and the promulgation of the date. And it's clear that they're seeking to reverse it because there is still a lot more work to do by the political parties in terms of registering people to get onto the voters' roll. And the IEC and the Minister of Cooperative Governance rather saying that she hopes the IEC's court papers, which they do at the Constitutional Court, will cater for the reopening of the voters' roll. But the DA saying that it wants the elections to go ahead in October, but it also wants the promulgation of the date to be reversed.
Yeah. Govind Whittles, our reporter outside the Constitutional Court there in Johannesburg.